You're listening to Scaling Up Services, where we speak with entrepreneurs, authors, business experts, and thought leaders to give you the knowledge and insights you need to scale your service-based business faster and easier. And now, here is your host, business coach Bruce Eckfeldt.
Are you a CEO looking to scale your company faster and easier? Check out Thrive Roundtable. Thrive combines a moderated peer group mastermind, expert one-on-one coaching, access to proven growth tools, and a 24/7 support community. Created by Inc. award-winning CEO and certified scaling up business coach Bruce Eckfeldt, Thrive will help you grow your business more quickly and with less drama. For details on the program, visit eckfeldt.com/thrive. That's ECKFELDT.com/thrive.
Welcome, everyone. This is Scaling Up Services. I'm Bruce Eckfeldt. I'm your host. And our guest today is Lee Caraher. She is founder and CEO of Double Forte. She's also an author and a speaker. We're going to talk to her a little bit about what people can do to engage their employees, what people can do to really drive culture, what we can do with selling and marketing. We're recording this beginning of April, and so we expect that people are going to be hopefully kind of coming out of, or at least starting to think about their plans coming out of the COVID situation. And we talk a little bit about some of the things people can do to start planning the recovery, start figuring out where they're going to land, what their business models are going to be. It's going to be obviously a very different world. Hopefully we can talk about some insights that people can use to navigate some of the challenges they're going to face. So with that, Lee, welcome to the program.
Bruce, thanks so much for having me. I'm so happy to be here.
Yeah. So before we kind of dig into the topics and help people figure out how they're going to navigate some of the COVID stuff, tell us a little bit about your background. So you're an author, you're a CEO, you're an expert in marketing and social media. What was the backstory? How did you get into this business?
Sure.
What was the journey that you've been on?
Well, the truth is that I went to college in way a long time ago, and I have a degree in medieval history, which is very practical.
Wow,
and
interesting.
I didn't know what the history department wanted me to go forward, and the music department wanted to go forward in music. And what I knew about myself was that I'm not good at focusing on one thing, and that I wouldn't be an A player if I only did one thing. My friend Ramona said, "Hey, you should try out PR," and I said, "What is PR?" And
personal record.
She said, "Go over the career." I was at college at the time. I was working at the college 1 year after I graduated. So I went over to the Career Center. There was a book, "What is PR?" So I read it and I said, "Hey, that looks like me." So I have been in public relations communication since I graduated from college so long ago, in agencies and in-house. And I started my own agency, this agency, Double Forte, in 2002, 2 or 3 crises ago. And never really, I started the company because I needed to have flexibility to be where I needed to be. My mother had gotten sick in Wisconsin. I lived in California. And I realized that 2 jobs I was up for I could not take. I would either have to withdraw or quit to be with my mom. So I started 2 agencies for Interpublic in between 1999, 98.
Mm-hmm.
And so I knew something about it. And then I started my own in 2002, not really thinking how long I would have the business, but here I am 18 years later. And, I started the farm before Twitter.
Mm-hmm.
So now have become an expert in that too, because it all communicates. Anything communication, we do. The service, the function is the same. The service is very different in so many ways, but that is sort of the journey of getting from where the hell was I to where I am now.
Yeah, no, that's a great one. I love the medieval history.
Yeah,
There's probably some interesting things you apply around medieval history right now.
I have to say, Black Plague.
Yeah, exactly.
And then along the way in the last few years, I'm a member of EO, Entrepreneurs Organization, which is like YPO for entrepreneurs, which is if you're not in it and you qualify, I highly recommend. And out of the Gestalt process, which is sharing your experience, not your advice, I wrote 2 books. One is Millennials in Management. After 2008, I changed the business model to have young people in our agency, which we hadn't had until that moment, and almost killed the company because I did not understand the generation that was coming in. And then the second book is called The Boomerang Principle, which is companies that allow and encourage people to return have a higher level of expertise and have a higher preponderance for success than those that don't, which probably is more relevant right now than the first one. So there we go.
Interesting how that's playing out. Yeah, highly encourage EO. Been a long time member and have gained a lot from it. Both being a member, being in leadership. We've got a lot of EO listeners I know in the program here. So great to hear that you're part of that organization. Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about the sort of the people side of things, because clearly all the work at home, the disruption to the economy, to the business process, pretty much. I mean, I would say 99% of businesses are significantly impacted. A lot of folks are laying people off, are putting people on furlough, are figuring out how to reduce their expenses, and obviously payroll for a lot of companies, certainly service-based companies, is the biggest element in many cases. So let's talk a little bit about, I guess, maybe some of the strategies, given some of the strategies people have used, what they can do should they need to be kind of bringing people back. I mean, I've seen people do anything from, just across the board salary reductions. I've seen people do furloughs. I've seen people do, moving people to part-time work, 0-hour part-time, schedules, things like this, all these kind of crazy things. Some people are just doing straight up layoffs. Obviously we'll kind of see how these government programs are kind of playing out, that encourage people to keep people on payroll. But, given the fact that most people have downsized their organization, how does a company start to look at rebuilding, restaffing? Should I be going after my existing staff? Should I be looking at new staff? What are some of the things or suggestions that you might have for folks as they start this process?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things. If you're an independent service agency company, you probably will actually have some opportunity on the other side of it, depending on the nature of your business. We compete with a lot of publicly traded agencies. We're much small, obviously hugely smaller, but you're always going to have bigger competition. Where you can be most nimble is where you can have the most opportunity for growth. In 2008, my agency actually grew at the end of the year because we offered a great service at such a reduced cost because we didn't have the overhead. So one, I think, if you're looking at your business, do that. On the people side, in a service firm, your asset is your people. And a few things on that, your how many people you have, how much you pay them, all that kind of stuff is built on a business model. So I would say the first piece is you may be too soon to know what the business model should be going forward. In June, July, it takes a while to have it settle out and see what happens. And depending on how these government programs work or don't, there'll be, it'll have an impact on that. So the first piece, I think, is even if it's an interim step, thinking about what is the change in the business model I should make right now? Because I think it's a mistake to not change a business model or not to evaluate it, at least, when something like this has happened. Because the world has just changed, and the business model that got you to the point where this pain came to you, you didn't create the pain, will have an impact, is not the business model that you should assume will go forward. So that's the first piece.
I guess how aggressive should people be on this in terms of kind of experimenting with different models, playing around with different offerings? And actually, I'm kind of curious on pricing strategy too. I mean, you mentioned that coming out of this, you'll be able to or possibly pick up business from your larger competitors by having, better, call it a value proposition. But I guess how aggressive should people kind of treat these new models? How aggressive should people be on pricing? Should you, really go aggressive on pricing to kind of gain leads? For how long are you going to kind of dig yourself?
I think on modeling, you're not going to know for sure. I think you make a best guess and then you put a time frame into when you should evaluate again, or a threshold in. So, coming in June, I think it's still too early to, redo everything in your business model, but you might say, okay, June, and then we're going to really reevaluate this in December for 2021, right? Because a lot of things are going to shake out. I mean, it's just going to take a long time. But my point is that we shouldn't assume that the business model we were winning with will be the business model we win with in the future.
Yeah.
Number one. Number two, on people and pricing, I'm not a bottom feeder. I don't believe in bottom feeding. A race to the bottom is never going to be a successful thing for anybody. Yeah. You're just going to always be a catfish on the bottom. And at the same time, what is reasonable and who you compete with, who do you compete with, and what are they burdened with that you are not, then I would take advantage of that. So in 2008, like I mentioned, we were independent public relations firm in San Francisco. We didn't have a New York office. Everybody was in the office and everyone was working from home 1 or 2 times a week. And we were competing with huge companies, with publicly traded companies that had very little flexibility in their business model, very little flexibility with people with being able to say yes or no to a client. They had to return to the street. Well, when you're independent and not having to return to the street, you have a lot more levers you can pull in a competitive marketplace. So what we did was not reduce our pricing, but freeze our pricing, because it was at the end of the year, if you recall, we were about to make an increase. So we were about to make an increase. We froze the pricing, and we kept that pricing until 2011, I think. So 3 full years where we would have seen an increase. But that was the market, So if you're not meeting the market, you don't have a business in service. So and what did that mean and then we rolled it back down, right? So if that's what the pricing is, we froze it, and didn't increase it, then what would it mean to getting more? And that was one first thing. The second thing was people are going to want more for less. Mm-hmm. So how do we get more output at the same cost? Because we weren't going to reduce our costs. But for the clients who were going to be attracted to us, they were going to feel a reduced cost because we were in a position to take on companies that may not have looked at a smaller independent in the past. So what was the value we were going to bring no matter what? Depending on the client, we slid it around a bit, frankly. Mm-hmm. What were they used to expecting? Yeah. We're always going to deliver the highest level of service possible because that's where you win, right? You don't win by doing less. You win by doing more than your competitors at a reasonable rate, because coming from the bottom and trying to regain from that is virtually impossible. Yeah. And then from a people perspective, what we have done right now, we've cut all our contractors, we've frozen all our salaries, and I'm going to keep those freezes in place for anybody over $100,000. Mm-hmm. And the under $100,000 people, because I haven't figured out a model yet, will stay frozen at least till September, and then we'll reevaluate that. So, there's a lot of levers to pull. The most important thing is to be focused on what do you offer to the market? Who are you competing with? And what are the things that they're going to be burdened with or not? And then rolling back on that.
Yeah. How do you gather this information? I mean, are there strategies that you suggest people use to, either talk to customers, to, survey what the competition is doing, to, kind of forecast a little bit about what the changing needs might be in the coming months and quarters?
Mm-hmm. I think depending on your business and where you operate, you probably have some of this intel anyway. The people who were expensive before are going to be expensive again because they're not going to get rid of, they can't shed and this is where the PR part's in. It's really hard to shed your reputation. If you're cheap, you were cheap. If you did a bad job, you do a bad job. If you were too expensive, you're too expensive. Those perceptions don't change overnight. Yeah. So understand what your reputation is and what are the reputations of the people that you compete with. In different categories, the different associations. So in my category, I'm actually on the board of the Public Relations Council, which is the National Association for Public Relations Agencies. Mm-hmm. So I have a lot of information on that. But your trade, whatever your trade is, whatever your publications are, they are right now doing everything they can to gather all this information and to provide their readers with as much valuable stuff as possible. So I'd be reading everything I can on this. And I think the important piece is who are we? What do we offer? What is our reputation? And I would pick up the phone, I'm in the process now, picking up the phone to clients and saying, okay, what can we do for you? Whatever it is, I'm not selling you anything. Yeah. What can I do for you? Mm-hmm. And then on the other side of this, we'll be saying, well, what should I'll be asking my most trusted clients what they think we need to do to be more relevant in the city, right? So that don't do it in a vacuum, right? Hopefully you have a peer group in your industry or a peer group among like an EO or something like that. But you should know what your reputation is. If you don't know, go find out. It's easy to do. Yeah. Right? It's easy to do. And ask for honest feedback. Because if people are just, you guys are great, they're lying to you. Everybody can improve. Everybody can improve. Yeah. You guys, we love you guys. I mean, in fact, the client said to me, you know what, Lee, I have a relatively strong opinion. You know what, Lee, we love you. We love your team. We love everybody. But what we need from you right now is for you not to be bossy. I'm like, all right, done. Yeah. Because it's just, I have a very strong opinion. I've been through these kinds of, not this kind of thing before. And their CEO is not willing to hear anything. Well, if you're not willing to hear anything, can we just agree that you're not going to hear anything? And we'll do the best we can given that situation. Yeah. So fine, right? Yep. So I have a reputation of being strong-minded, depending on the person, maybe bossy. I hate that word for a woman, but whatever it is. And doing great work. My team does excellent work. We have that reputation, but we do have the reputation of having a strong opinion and pushing the envelope on it. Well, maybe right now is not the time to push the envelope on your strong opinion when the people that you serve may not be willing or able or capable of hearing your expertise.
Yeah. Yeah, it's always the case. I find that the people's greatest strengths end up becoming, weaknesses depending on the context.
Absolutely.
So it's really kind of interesting.
All of you.
Yeah. Well, and it's not about trying to level that out necessarily. It's just understanding the contextual nature of it, and having a strategist saying, hey, look, in these times, I know that my winning strategy, and that I normally use, doesn't work or isn't as appropriate in these cases. So I'm going to have plan B in these contexts. One
thing that I have a group of that's in San Francisco and in New York. I have an office in New York as well. I have small informal groups of agencies that we overlap a little bit, but we're not direct competitors. And I've been on the phone with mostly the San Francisco crew, just thinking of all these things through because we refer businesses to each other all the time. But everyone's sort of struggling with, and I just asked them, like, what's our reputation? Mm-hmm. What do you guys think of so-and-so? What do you think about, this agency? What do you think about that agency? Yeah. What have you heard? Kind of stuff. Because the more input you have, the better decision you can make.
Yeah, no, exactly. And now's the time to collect data, even if you can't take decisive action right now because things are still playing out and you're trying to let things kind of settle or at least work themselves out in terms of what is the new normal going to be. You can certainly collect information. You can certainly stay, on top of things, keep your finger on the pulse of what's going on. So let's talk about people a little bit and culture and staffing. So, assuming that many service-based companies have, downsized or furloughed or have done various things to reduce their payroll and are now, are hopefully looking forward to staffing back up to some level. What are the kind of things you need to consider? How do you, potentially even take advantage of this opportunity to kind of retool a little bit? How should you approach the whole kind of talent side of your business as you kind of focus on recovery and rebuilding and pivoting?
So hopefully you're in a strong position with your employees that you have, depending on what you had to do or decisions you made back in April or March or whatever it was, that you are on good terms, right? And you can, in any moment in time, you have to control how well you do this action, whatever it is, layoff, firing, furlough, reduce payroll, whatever it is. Number one, if you haven't also taken the payroll, if you got cut, if you haven't also participated in the pain, do not expect anybody to return to you. So if you haven't done that yet, take some pain right now and take some so that you can share. You can be part of the group that has been in pain, because just working extra hours is not pain. That is our job. We're leaders of independent firms. We're service firms. Hello, that's the deal. Yeah. That's what you signed up for when you decided to do this. So assuming that you've taken part of the pain and you've looked at, what is the current base? What do we have? What do they want from us right now? And what do we think the best way to service that for the future is? Then bringing people off furlough, is the least. But you don't have to bring everybody off at the same time, right? The benefit of the furlough is that people can look for work and they can still have health care, right? And that your intention is to bring them back. Yep. So that's the great benefit of the furlough. Pain for them, pain for you, and you're giving them health care, which is the biggest thing, right? Yep. And the stigma, I guess, of being furloughed, not laid off is better. Mm-hmm. I don't think it's going to matter, frankly. Laid off, furloughed, fired. It's not going to matter in June, July, the rest of the year for the person that was impacted. Yeah. So first, is this the team that you want? What were the things that were 80% of the time were great and then 20% of the time were a pain in the ass? Mm-hmm. Well, did that just change? So for instance, in my own experience from the downturn in 2008, I said to everybody, we had got, we were doing really, I had gone from myself to 18 people. We were picking and choosing what we wanted to work with. I had actually decided I was going to work 4 days a week. And then on September 14th, I decided 4 days a week. On September 15th, I was like 8 days a week. And hopefully we don't have to lay everybody off, Yeah. And on Wednesday, I had a staff meeting that week. And I said, okay, here's what we're doing. Freezing this, cutting that, blah, blah, blah. And I said, the most important thing is that our clients cannot hear us say no, even if that's the right answer. Our clients have to hear us say yes, even if we're not going to do it. Meaning, they call and they say, hey, I have an idea, let's do this. And you think it's the stupidest idea on the planet. And you don't say no. Well, how about this instead? Because a client you're in the service business to help people and to take things off their shoulders. And if they just keep hearing no from you, they will go find someone who says yes. So instead of saying, yes, it's a great idea, I want you to say, interesting. Let me bounce it along here, and then I'll get back to you within a day. So they haven't heard you say no. You've built some time to come back to them with a better idea but you can couch it in their yes, right? So that was the first piece. And everybody who didn't get to be easy to work with, I cut in January, even if I didn't have to.
Yeah.
Because that was the first piece. So that'll be the first piece on this. So I might say, I think we're pretty easy to work with right now because we'd already moved to that because we saw some softness. We were all anticipating softness coming into 2020. In fact, we have a theme every year, and our theme we set in January is reimagine. Wow. Who would have thunk, right?
Yeah.
So if being easy to work with for us was the critical thing for service, and people weren't willing to switch, they had to go.
Yeah.
Another example is in the way we communicate today. Nothing has changed more since I started this company in the world and how we communicate. And some people didn't want to learn it. Mm-hmm. I don't want to do that, Lee. Well, if you're not going to do it, then you can't work here. So we put those thresholds into place. Like, what do we need to move forward no matter what? And we said it out loud. Here's what we expect from everybody. And if people weren't willing to do it, or if they said yes and then acted differently, they had to go. So that's the first piece, I think, is setting a vision. Don't just assume you bring everybody back into the same position because nothing changed. No, something has dramatically changed. It's your job to set a vision and to paint the picture of what you want, even if it's going to change, because it's going to change. And then lay out the conditions that you think are incredibly important for your business to succeed. And if your people aren't willing to do those conditions and you aren't willing to model them, then, they got to go.
Yeah. It's an interesting one because it's both the business model, it's understanding, okay, well, how are we going to be successful in this new world? But then it's also this, okay, well, then who do we need? Like, what are the people we need? And let's take this as an opportunity to really, make sure that we're sharpening the axe here. And, given the new model, how do we get the best and the brightest? I mean, honestly, the fact is there's going to be a lot of talent on the market, so for those people that do kind of figure out a workable business model and start getting some traction, now is the time to get the best talent you can for the best price you can. And, obviously it's a horrible situation that we're going through, but it is going to mean that the people that come out of this reasonably healthy and can, get traction and start to build are going to have a huge advantage because there's going to be a lot of really great people that are really looking to work. And so if you can take advantage of that, you're going to have a leg up.
I think the same piece at the same time, though, Bruce, just to interrupt for a second, is how you treat the people who you're not going to keep. Mm-hmm. How can you help them? Where can you make some phone calls? How can you look at their resume? Whatever you can do to help those people, because those people are going to go into the world and they will eventually, hopefully you hired only good people. They just don't fit right now, right? They're going to go into the world and they can help you or hurt you. And this is the point of my second book, Boomerang, right? Is that let everybody at least have a strong position to help you. So if you can make some phone calls, if you can give them contract work, if you can, whatever it is, right? Keep them furloughed for a while so they can have health care. Treat them well. Then you'll be in a better position for them to help you later. So if they go find a business, go find a job, and they need a partner, they immediately think of you. Yeah. So they're not out there sowing bad seeds for you because it's already going to be hard enough. It was hard enough before this thing. It's going to be hard enough to get traction. What you don't need is a lot of people out there griping about how you treated them. Now, can you control the griping even if you treated them well? No, you can't, but you need to be in a defensible position for that. And that's your strength will come in the future based on how you treat your people today, no matter if you keep them or don't.
Yeah, the thing I find about that is if you treat them well, treat them with respect, do what you can to help them, even if they choose to kind of gripe about that regardless, generally what I find is people know that they will tend to gripe. They're kind of gripers. Yeah. So that it will kind of tease out or it will work itself out. And I can't tell you how many previous employees ended up becoming clients. They go off and become, experts in, they go over to client side, they become the director of, such and such, and all of a sudden they're hiring you. So, I mean, it's not just about, hey, I might want them back someday, or they may refer somebody in, but you may have to report into them. Right?
Exactly.
They may become your client.
It's a small world, right? And it became much smaller. Mm-hmm. And, the whole idea that if they leave me, they're dead to me is gone. You cannot have that point of view. And the other point of view, which is if they leave me, I don't care about them anymore. You also cannot have that point of view because you need to care about everybody who's ever touched you. Yeah. Ever touched you, because they they can all carry a thing. The one thing I would do I would do it for everybody, I guess, go look at Glassdoor and see what people are saying now, right? And you can measure that over time because it's a high degree of grapers.
Yep.
But if you're looking at competition versus yourself and all that kind of stuff, you can do it. You can measure well based on what is going. Again, you have to take a grain of salt, but you can do at least a directional measure of yourself if people are talking there or of others in your market, so you can see some things. So, there's it is all about the people. If you're in a service business, it's all about how your people show up, how they deliver, how they represent. And so you chose these people to come into your business. Are they not staying with your business because you don't have the business, or because they didn't perform, or because they're on the bubble, or because you changed your model, or because you're dropping that service? They can all hurt you, and they can all help you.
Exactly.
My guess and my experience is the more people will help you when they can, if you've treated them well.
Yeah, no, it's very true. And karma, karma plays a role in this, and it can take a long time too. Sometimes this is years later that this comes up. I've seen it happen too many times.
So true.
Do not play a short game on this, because you either win or lose years later when this actually comes to bear.
There's some war stories from 2008, from 2012, from 2002 that people are still, your reputation follows you.
Oh, yeah.
So, and if you need to correct your reputation, if you need to, if someone says, you guys suck, you're greedy, you shortchange people, you're nickel and dime everybody. Well, now is the time to listen to them and then figure out a way forward that doesn't preclude you from growth, because those things will.
Yeah, exactly. It's funny. I find it happening on the other side with clients. Those clients that are, treating you well, doing what they can to pay invoices, versus, clients that are taking advantage of the situation, not communicating with you. I think the flip side is happening for a lot of folks as they're going to go through this process. So there may be some client side assessments you want to do coming out of the other side.
We are so fortunate in Double Forte. Most 99.9, we don't have 100 clients, but you know what I mean. Yeah. We've been in high communication with them. Some have had to, there's things that they've had to do. One client, who will never be a client again, pulled force majeure on us, even though they decided it's not going to stand up. And in the process of it, actually called back and said, "We'd really like you to keep moving with us." I'm like, absolutely not.
Oh, interesting.
Absolutely not. Are you kidding me? No. The only way we would do this is, here's what you'd have to pay us. And I doubled the cost, and I had it all up front, because there's no way I'm putting my team, myself, and my agency at risk for people who treat people, for a company organization who treats people like that.
Yeah.
So, and then literally this was 2 weeks ago. And then last week someone called, "Lee, I thought you guys handled this company." Yep, we did. And they want to work with us. I'm like, well, here's what I would do. And even in this time when everyone needs every dime, they're like, nope, won't do it.
Yeah, because I know, look, it's short-term pain. Like everyone's, in short-term pain right now. But I think, the people that have been through a couple of these cycles know that the decisions you make now, you're going to have to live with for, several years. And, yeah, exactly. If not ever. And so, yes, it can be really painful to say no to, immediate income. But if that means years of, trying to service a painful client or someone who's not really aligned with your values is not a long-term decision. So, and that's the hard part of leadership, the hard part of running business.
Hard. Yeah. It's so hard. And I think, it's just the long game is what you have to play, even if it's
ramen noodles for a couple weeks, a couple months.
I mean, I
may
may have a bag of those in my closet right now. Just saying, it's tough. Nothing's easy about this. And I mean, I just encourage all your listeners to make sure that you're taking the moment at a time to say, what is the go forward? What are we going to keep offering? What are we not going to keep offering? What do people need? What are people calling for right now? Because that's the need right now. Will that be the need later? The other piece is, who are the learners in my organization?
Yeah.
Because if you're a member of VO, so you're constantly learning. The learners are going to be the ones who help us win. And if people aren't willing to learn, now is the time to cut them.
Yeah. Well, the fact is, I mean, you're going to, as much as you can kind of play around with different business models and find some traction in areas, you're going to have a lot more change, over the next year or two. And you've got to be adjusting quickly. And if your organization is not able to pivot, as new information comes in and you see new opportunities, you're going to fall behind. So yeah, making sure that you're building building a team, which is a learning organization and is going to be able to process and respond to information quickly is going to be key. Well, Lee, this has been a pleasure. If people want to find out more about you, about the work that you do, what's the best place to get that information?
The best place to get the information is leecaraher.com, LeeCaraher.com. You can get to my agency, Double Forte, from there. You can find my books there. You can follow me on Twitter at Lee Caraher. It's really easy to find me. Or LinkedIn, Lee Caraher. I don't know. It's crazy. But I blog about these topics all the time, and we offer free assessments and all that kind of stuff. If people just want to email me and say, what about this? I will give them an answer.
Awesome. I'll make sure that those links are in the show notes so people can click through and get it. Thanks so much for taking some time. I always love having EO members on. Great conversation. Like I said, I think this is going to be key for folks as they kind of come out of this and figure out what their strategies are, business models, next steps, managing reputations. So a lot of great information, a lot of helpful strategies here. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Bruce, so much.
You've been listening to Scaling Up Services with business coach Bruce Eckfeldt. To find a full list of podcast episodes, download the tools and worksheets, and access other great content, visit the website at scalingupservices.com. And don't forget to sign up for the free newsletter at scalingupservices.com/newsletter.